Get your cameras on, please. And I need one of you to do me a favor. If anybody can go to YouTube, let me know, because for some reason, sometimes it doesn't show me here. Anybody go there and let me know if it's on. Anyone? Let me know if YouTube is on, please. Right, Sam says is on. All right, thank you, appreciate that. We're gonna see. So if anybody's watching on YouTube, if you make any comments or any questions, I will see them in a little bit. So far, it's not showing me here. So I just wanted to let you guys know I'm not ignoring you on YouTube, okay? So Zoomers, go over this. We're gonna talk about real estate market economics. Now, right here, it is not a long chapter either, but right here, the thing that we need to understand the most, I'm not going to go into like too much detail as it's not needed, but it is something that you guys need to understand is the way the market works, especially because tomorrow we're going to talk about appraisals, and appraisals and or valuations have to do with how the market shifts. Okay, so what I'm going to start is I'm going to start by the end, and then I'm going to come back up. So I'm going to show you, last page, there's something that you guys need to clearly understand, and this is called the real estate supply and demand cycle. All right, you don't have to go to the last page right now, it's totally up to you. I just want to show you something quick before I go start this chapter. It will make it a lot easier if you guys understand this first. Okay? So, stream is on. Perfect. Sorry, stream just opened up. If anybody's watching on YouTube, we are live and the chat is live as well. Great. All right, great. So, the real estate supply and demand cycle. As you can tell, obviously, it's a circle. Therefore, the word cycle. That means things repeat themselves. Okay, so things repeat themselves. Like right now, we have high prices. Right? Why do we have high prices? This is where we are right now. Actually, it's easier for me to explain what's happening to the market because it starts from the top. That's where we are. A couple of years ago, not too long ago, we're at the bottom. Right? So the way it works is there's an undersupply of properties. Like right now, it's difficult, especially here where I'm at in Newark, as an example. It's difficult for you to find a property that's available for sale or for rent. Things are so tough that there's a lot of demand, right? So there's an undersupply, and if there's not enough properties out there, then the prices go up, right? And there's low vacancy. Like you cannot have an empty apartment right now. It's impossible if you have an empty room right now. Like people are renting rooms. It's crazy. So because of where we are, construction went up. Construction went up. There's more houses being built in the area, and multifamily buildings also being built in the area. Okay, so as construction goes up, there's a rise in vacancy. That means empty apartments, right? And there's falling prices. Now, this might not be immediate. Construction needs to be built until the market kind of like stabilizes for these to start dropping. And that's when we reach the supply and demand equilibrium, where there's enough housing and there's enough people in demand. So there's that balance for the market to have its value. So anything that's too high eventually must fall, right? So as the prices fall, right, keeps on rising vacancy. Now there's an oversupply. There's too much construction in the area, too much construction, and the housing prices drop, rental prices drop, and high vacancy. So are we saying low prices like dramatic drop in value? No. Over the years, there's a cycle, and there's a stabilization or equilibrium, as we were saying, right, of roughly 10 to 15%. In extreme conditions, 20%. And out of this world, once in a blue unicorn scenarios like happened in 2009, right, they dropped 40 or 50% in certain areas, right? But on average, you look at 10 to 15% variable here, 10 to 15%, up or down on average, okay? That's the equilibrium. And again, you can look at it on a cycle of also 10 to 15 years. So over the next 10 years to 15 years, you'll see a shift where the prices drop and then start coming back up. That's the cycle that's happening. So eventually, you're going to see the prices drop. Okay? Construction stops because there's not as much demand in the area, right? And if there's not enough construction, then we start filling in the blanks. So the vacancy or the empty spots starts falling and prices go back up because now we're in demand again. And we reach the next point of equilibrium, that balance, that stabilization that I was talking about within the 10 to 15%, right? And then rises, right? Because now we filled in the blanks. There's not enough vacancy, so prices go up. There's demand. There's demand. Guess where we are again? Construction. So I don't know if you ever noticed this in your town or growing up, whatever areas they lived in or went to. If you ever noticed this, but there's like a season, a period of time that everybody's building, and then after a while it just like stops. Why did it stop? Because there's not enough demand for new houses to keep on being built, right? So there's this variable, the cycle. And guys, if you notice, so taking it from a circle, this is what happens. Okay, so these are key points right here. And we have, as an example, we have 2000 or 2001, right? And then in 2009, the crash happened. It was not supposed to be a crash. It was supposed to be this balancing of the scales, right? And then we're now in and it kept on rising, but we're now in 2020 and the prices are, sorry, I did this wrong. Oh yeah, it was high, and then 2009 it dropped, started dropping, and then somewhere in 2010, 2012, I'm sorry, we hit rock bottom. Then in 2020, that's where we are. We're all the way up high again. So right before this 2009 crash, right? And who knows? Maybe in 2025 or so, we're at a low again. Not sure, but this cycle has been happening for years, right? So it goes up. Once it reaches up, it starts coming down. Once it reaches down, it starts going up. Reaches up, it starts coming down, and so on. So I can trail this further back. If you guys watch trends, like Realty Trends, they have great graphics on the real estate market. And if you guys go there, Realty Track, I'm sorry. If you guys go there, Realty Track. And you guys need to be aware of this. Not only as a realtor, but maybe as an investor, or hey, just knowing what's happening in your town, what's happening to your market, right? Realty Track is great for that. Talking to a realtor like us is great for that, because then we can pull statistics or reports from the tools that we have. But you will see that this has been going on for ages, right? Unfortunately, you will not see it exactly like this. What you will see, once you check those charts, it's going to look like a stock market. It's going to look like the stock market, but on a slower scale. So back in 1930, for instance, everything was in the 100,000s, right? And then it goes rise, drop, rise, drop, rise, drop, rise, drop. This is 2009 to 12, for instance, example. And then we keep on going up, right? So this is 2020, that's where we're at. So this is how you're going to see it. But if you were to zoom in, this is what you would see on the 10 to 15-year scale. Okay, so that's the cycle that I was telling you about before, right? Up and down. So the prices are constantly increasing over the years, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't drop. Okay, so it's very key that you guys understand what's happening to the markets, especially when you're trying to help somebody purchase. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Okay. So real estate is an economic product that is subject to economic laws and influences, much like all of the other goods and services in our economic system. Now, real estate professionals do not have to be economists. In fact, they're better off leaving the complex economic theories to those professing expertise in that often confusing field. However, brokers and agents do need the basic understanding of how our economy works, and particularly how real estate as an economic product fits into the real estate marketplace. Understanding the fundamentals of real estate enables one to recognize the effect of the current economic conditions in the real estate market on transaction prices and values, apply the economic principles to estimate the future conditions in the real estate market, and apply the economic principles to specific geographical areas and property types in order to assess economic conditions for a particular property and site. So this I have to address, where it says specific geographical areas. When somebody says the economy is great, all right, and this is not political. I'm just giving you an example for real estate, okay? So before anybody thinks that's what I'm saying. But when somebody says the economy is great, you have to understand where they are, okay? You have to understand the level or the class that they live in, right? Because the economy is not great for everybody. Even if we're all living here in Newark, economy is great in terms of housing market, right? Because you can ask whatever you want. You can say, hey, I want $700,000 for the house, and somebody would pay $700,000 for the house, right? But does that mean the economy is great? No, the real estate market is great, all right? So knowing that the economy is great is when it favors everybody. Unfortunately, real estate market is great in Newark, right? But it's not as good outside of Newark in certain areas. It's not as good as it is here, right? It hasn't increased as much, right? I'll give you an example. I have a property in Pinesville, which is close to Delaware, right? Market did not increase that much, as much as it did here. Market increased there probably 10%, where here it increased 30 or 40%. over the past 5 years, right? So the economy is great where? You understand? Real estate market is. People are talking about on TV, economy is great, and they're talking about, look at the New York Stock Exchange. Well, that's stock. Stock is not economy, right? Stock is a global effect, yes, of investments into companies, but it's not what helps us as individuals grow. You understand? So there's different factors. If the economy is doing well, like in all factors, like the real estate, the commerce is booming here, let's say in the Ironbound section of Newark, right? The real estate market is going up, business is booming, right? There's more labor in the area. Now that's a good economy. If you want to establish it like that, that's a good economy. But when the stock market is up, the real estate is up, and everybody's living in poverty, right? Then is the economy great? These are things to consider when somebody says the economy is amazing, right? These are things to consider. It's amazing to whom? To the people that for instance, like Jeff Bezos, that made almost doubled his fortune during the pandemic. Oh, I'm sure for him the economy is great, right? To the high-end politicians, CEOs, gazillionaires that make even more money, yeah, for them the economy is great, right? But what is economy? You have to go down to specific geographical areas and see what's happening there. You cannot process the country as a whole when there's areas that are in default. You guys understand this? Over 3 million foreclosures started over the past couple of weeks. 3 million foreclosures over the past couple of weeks. Is the economy great? All right. So you need to, this is key, guys, and I'm not attacking anything in particular. I'm just trying to bring out the obvious. Because if you guys don't know these principles, right? We don't have to be experts, but if you guys don't know these principles, then how can you best serve your clients? If you don't know these cycles, what's happening, how can you best serve your client? How can you say, yeah, that's a great investment? In my opinion, that's a great investment because this is happening to the market. You understand? How can you say that? You need to understand. So these are abilities that will benefit any real estate professional. All right, so let's go to the market system. There's something called supply and demand. All right, I'm sure everybody knows what supply and demand is. Supply is the quantity of a particular product. So in this case, real estate. Demand is the quantity of a product or service that is desired for purchase, for lease or trade at any given time. So do people want it? All right, that's important to know. So the interplay of supply and demand is what makes the economy work. Consumers demand goods and services, and suppliers and sellers produce and distribute the goods and services for a negotiated price. Now the price mechanism, okay? In addition to supply and demand, the other critical component of an economic system is the price mechanism, or simply price. The price is the amount of money or assets or other asset that a buyer has agreed to pay and the seller has agreed to accept to complete the exchange of a good or service. It is the quantification of the value of an item being traded. So price, the true price of an item, pretty much is the final number. Because there's something called listed price, right? The listed price. Go to forget real estate. Let's go to a clothing store. Let's go to Kohl's, Macy's, whatever, right? Some people walk in with coupons, discounts, right? Some people look for the clearance section, as an example. Well, it doesn't matter what you list it for. What matters is what you're paying for. So the true price of something, price, is the final number that everybody agreed to. Okay? Now, value and value determinants. Price is not something of value in itself. It is only a number that quantifies value. So if I pay something today, if I pay $100,000 for something today, is that its value? No, that's its price. Because value is what it's going to bring me in the future. The future value. Present to future value, right? So when I buy a polo, for instance, when I buy a shirt, for instance, I pay X amount of dollars expecting it to last X amount of months, years, decades, right? Whatever it is that I expected. So in this example, we have air conditioners. Do air conditioners have the same value year-round? Guys, do air conditioners have the same value year-round? No. So does that mean they have the same price year-round? They might not either. You guys notice that if you want to buy an AC unit right now, right, we're in the middle of winter, just like clothes, the same thing. If you want to buy summer clothes now, they're cheaper, right, than buying in the middle of summer. If you want to buy an air conditioner the day that it's like 100 degrees, right, their air conditioner that used to cost $100, it costs $150 now, right, or more, as an example. So this has to do specifically with value. What you pay today is not the value, all right? So consider consumer demand for air conditioners. Why do air conditioners have value, and how much they command the price they do? How do they command the price they do? So the value of something is based on answers to 4 questions. How much do I desire it? How useful is it? How scarce is it? Am I able to pay for it? All right? So these are the main questions. How much do I desire it? I think that's the best one right here. It's the best question. Okay? So it's asking pretty much why. How much do I desire it? Why do I need it? Like, what's the reason for it? How much, right? How useful and how scarce is it, right? And how am I able to pay for it? So this is goes back to the same concept of if you guys watch Start With Why, if you read it or if you listen to it, these are the basic concepts of value. Basic concepts of value. So if you guys, again, if you read the book or listen to the book, or if you watch the TED Talk that Simon Sinek gives, and a lot of people complain about it. Actually, I had this conversation last night with a student. A lot of people complain about it, like there's no workbook or action step or follow up to the book Start With Why, because Start With Why is ideology. And it's simply, why do you do what you do? Like, how much do you desire this? Like, you're here in the real estate class, right? How much do you desire this, right? For you to figure out the value of it, how much do you desire it? How useful is it going to be for you? How scarce is it? How many people are doing this, right? So this is what you need to do as an example, right? And then, am I able to pay for it? This example is the how, right? That's the final question. First is identifying the desire. In anything you do, in anything you want to attribute value, in any sales pitch that you give, identify the why, then what needs to be done, or what use is going to have, right? And then, how are we going to do this? What's the next step, right? So again, desire is key. Utility is key. The ability to do the job. Scarcity, right? Third critical element of value is a product's availability in relation to the demand. Is there a lot out there, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but we had a huge snowstorm a couple of years ago. There was not enough salt, right? To the point that the bag of salt doubled, literally doubled in price. Wanted to have it, there was not enough. If you wanted to have it, you had to be the first one there at 7 o'clock in the morning when it was delivered, and the price was double, right? As soon as the snow started to go away, right, they still had the high prices. The people were still trying, like, hey, there's another storm coming, so be ready for it. Hey, here's the price, buy now, right? Then we had nothing else for a couple of years. Like, we haven't had snow, like heavy snow, for a couple of years. So the prices of these bags just went down. So scarcity, very important value. And then the purchasing power, the ability to pay. So for real estate, the purchasing power comes from financing. Like right now, the interest rates are so low, right? The credit requirements change a little bit because of the pandemic, but the rates are so low, right, that almost anybody can finance it. Almost anybody can buy because rates are so low. But in contrast, the values are so high that makes it in certain areas, right, specific geographic areas, the values are high that it's difficult for you to be able to afford even though the interest rate is low, right? So again, you need to know the product, the location or market that you're addressing it to. Purchasing power is also key. Nope, not 2010, but that was a good one too. I mean, bad one too. Not 2010. It was like 6, 7 years ago. There was another one. I just remember I was living here in Newark still. I haven't been in Newark in 4 years. No, it's gonna be 5 years. So it was somewhere around there. So 5, 6 years ago. All right. So where were we? Productivity and costs. To produce a good or service, a supplier incurs costs. So there's cost, there's price, and there's value. We already know price is what we pay today, right? We already know value is what we get in the future. But there's something that was in the past. Cost, right? So, or those expenses necessary to generate and deliver the item to the market. The essential production costs are the cost of capital, so financing, or even putting the money being tied there, materials, supplies, labor, management, overhead. These are the costs of production or the cost to put it on the market. Now, costs play an important role in dynamics of supply and demand and value since the producer has limited resources. It is important to maximize the efficiency of the production process and minimize the costs. Moreover, since consumers will pay the lowest possible price for comparable goods and services, the producer, so whoever creates it, right, must be price competitive to stay in business. A competitor who can produce an item of similar quality for less will eventually force the higher price items out of the market. We're aware of this, right? So when we're going to talk about this tomorrow more in detail, but bringing back to real estate, if I see a house down the street that it's $400,000, right? But where I'm at right now, I'm looking at a house that it's exactly the same. It's just maybe different color, but everything else is the same. But instead of 400, this one is 380. Why would I go for the 400? That one's going to stay on the market forever. Nobody wants that one. They want the 380. It's the same thing, right? And this is something also key to remember. Because when you are listing a property, you need to consider, should we put it at a higher price? Should we put it at what market value is demanding, or should we put lower? How much do we want to attract? How many buyers do we want to bring? And it goes back to specific geographic areas as well. In Newark, you can ask whatever you want. But if you go to, I don't know, if you go to East Brunswick, as an example, maybe the market there is different and you cannot demand whatever you want because the sales don't have a high turnover like here. You guys understand? So you need to know your market. Make sure you have the same thing or similar quality for less than your competition, and yours will always get sold. Right? It will even drive the price if you're the only one left. It will drive the price up. So once the 380s are out of the way, right? Once the 380s are out of the way, and the 400 is the only one left, now maybe you can ask for 410. Maybe you can even ask for 420 because there's nothing else on the market. But as long as there's the 380s, the 390s, and so on, that 400 will stay there on the market forever. All right, so things to consider. Cost and price. Consider a producer who is efficient and produces the product or service in demand at the lowest possible cost. Adding to the cost the profit margin, a required profit margin. The producer establishes a minimum price for the item. In this scenario, cost essentially equals price. To the efficient producer, costs and sufficient profit are paramount since a lower price puts the producer out of business. At that point, the elements of value, which are desire, utility, scarcity, and purchasing power, do not matter. If the consumer wants the item at all, he or she must cover the producer's costs and profit. Right? So like I said, there's not a what we call it, the demand will determine the value. In summary, supply, demand, and price interact continuously in the market, and underlying and influencing these forces are the dynamics of value and costs of producing goods and services. Now, what is market? What is a market? A market is a place where things are bought, sold, traded. Simple. A market is a place where things are bought, sold, traded, or exchanged. Right? That is a market. So we have, this is what I was saying right from the beginning. When we talk about the economy, right? We have to look, what kind of market are we looking at? Is it a global market or are we specific? The real estate market is great. The stock market is great, right? We need to know exactly what it is that people are saying is great in order to determine that the economy as a whole is great, right? So a market is a place where supply and demand encounter one another. Suppliers sell or trade their goods and services to demanders, who are the consumers and buyers. Okay, so it is. I like the way they said it here. It's the transaction arena, right? So the market is the transaction arena, is where transactions happen, whether it's a sale or an exchange or trade. Supply, demand, and price interrelationships, very simple. It's a seesaw effect. If the supply increases relative to demand, prices increase. If supply decreases relative to demand, then price increases. Demand increases relative to supply, price increases. If demand increases relative to supply, then price decreases. So this is it's a seesaw effect. Supplies go up, not enough demand, prices drop. If supply goes down, there's too much demand, then prices rise. Simple. Market equilibrium, we talked about, is where everything gets balanced, right? And again, the word equilibrium already says it. Balance, right? So a market tends toward a state of equilibrium in which supply equals demand and price and cost and value are identical. According to this principle, market demand moves to meet supply and supply moves to meet demand. So if there is an extreme shortage of an item for which there is normally a strong demand, suppliers will rush to increase production to close the gap. That's when we talked about the cycle, right? I started with the end and then coming back up. That cycle, right? If there's not enough construction, there's a lot of demand for the area. What will they do? They'll start producing more. So they'll increase the production to close that gap between lack of vacancy, and the demand. So if inventories on the item are very high, so there's too much of it, suppliers will stop production and then the oversupply has been depleted. Similarly, if the price of an item far exceeds its cost, new suppliers will enter the market with lower prices. If the price of an item is far less than its perceived value, then either consumers will bid up the price or the perceived value will decline. So what you'll see, to address this one real quick, so you will see sometimes is that there's construction companies that go out there and build something, right? And then the developer, right, will ask for $500,000. I bring my construction company and I go build the same thing, right? The people that I work with, I build the same thing, exactly the same, but I'll ask for $400,000, $100,000 gap. Why would I do that, right? Because my house will sell first. Like, I don't have a profit, a ridiculous profit like the $400,000 guy will, right? Or the $500,000 guy will, right? Not a ridiculous profit, but I have a high turnover. And for a lot of businesses, volume, right? Volume, way better, right? So it's one of the things that I've always talked about when I teach, when we talk about real estate investments, is I prefer to make 20,000 than to make 100,000. A lot of people go like, "What do you mean, Bruno? Like, everybody prefers to make 100,000 over 20." Well, the question is, How long is it going to take for you to get the 100,000? That's it. That's the question. I'll make 20,000 constantly, right? But if you're trying to make a high margin, profit margin, your house stays on the market for too long, overpriced, right? That's where new people come in, like we just said. So if a new convenience store, as another example, opens on the edge of a rapidly growing town, the owners know demand will increase. So they will anticipate the demand of their with their increment of supply. Now, initially, the store creates excess supply, right? Because there's demand. Excess supply, so the business is slow. However, as people move in, hold on. All right, so however, as people move in, the demand increases and the store begins to make substantial profits. After some time, other retailers hear that the store is profitable. Demand now significantly exceeds supply. The operating costs are out of line with the values and prices, and the second retailer opens a store to equalize the imbalance. See, the new competitor, in addition to supply, now forces the prices, costs, and profits into closer proximity. So it's either you drop your price or they'll take over altogether, right? And this is a clear example when you guys see, obviously now you don't feel it, right? But when you see McDonald's, when you see Burger King's, Wendy's, like McDonald's already knows that this is going to happen no matter what, because they're the pioneers. They're the first ones there. They're the first franchise of burgers, right? So another burger joint is going to open up. It's going to be a McDonald's, it's going to be a Wendy's or a Burger King across the street. They already put into their calculations to know if this place is profitable. They already put into their calculations what's going to happen once the second retailer shows up. You guys understand? So over trial and error, they already know what to do. But most people don't. Most people are like, hey, I'm the only one here, I can charge whatever I want. Because I have the thing that everybody wants. Great. What about when somebody copies you? What are you going to do then? Right? So, things to remember. Equilibrium time lag. See, in theory, market strives for equilibrium, but in reality, there's always a time lag between recognizing balance and the completion of market adjustments. Since the underlying determinants of supply and demand, scarcity, desire, utility, purchasing power, and costs are constantly changing, a market is usually in some condition of imbalance. Now, the good thing, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow, but the good thing is this time lag for real estate. Because the time lag for real estate is predictable. The time lag for real estate is predictable. And I showed you guys by showing that drawing that graph that shows the prices over the years, right? They went up, they went down, they went up and down, but ultimately always going up, right? So predictable. You guys have any questions so far regarding market? It's a pretty simple chapter, self-explanatory so far, right? But if you have any questions, definitely drop them. YouTubers as well. So real estate market dynamics. As an economic commodity, real estate is bought, sold, traded, and leased as a product within the real estate market. Real estate, like other products and services, is subject to laws of supply and demand. It's governed in the market by price mechanism, influenced by producers' costs to bring product to the market, influenced by the determinants of value, utility, scarcity, desire, and purchasing power. The distinguishing characteristics, guys, for real estate is this. Land, so the inherent product value. Land is scarce resource, meaning there's no new land being created. Earth is earth. That's it. Continents are continents. Regions are regions. Countries are countries, right? Towns, municipalities, like you keep on trickling down to your neighborhood. Can you move the land from one place to another? No, you can remove dirt, right? But you cannot move the land. So, because there's no new land, right? like gold and silver, it has both inherent value and utility value. Unique appeal of the product, because there's no two parcels of real estate that can be alike. Even though they're side by side and they're 25 by 100 each, right? One is closer to the heavy road, one is away from the heavy road, heavy traffic road. So it changes value. One is right at the corner, changes value. You guys understand? So they're not exactly the same. They might be the same size, they might have the same house on top of it, same structure, but value does change. Okay? Demand must come to supply. The other key thing about real estate compared to everything else, look, almost everywhere I can sell this phone for the same value. Almost everywhere, right? Because I can go to Texas and sell the phone, it has the same value. I can go to California, it has the same value, right? Same price, whatever I want. Real estate, no. I can build a house that costs me $300,000 to build, right? In a here, let's say the Newark area, but once I go to South Newark, the same design is going to cost me a little bit less, but guess what? The value is also going to be different. I cannot demand the same price in south of Jersey as I can in here in the north of Jersey. And then if I bring the same design to Texas, let's say to I don't know, to Austin, Texas, different value. The same design, I bring it to the middle of New York, let's say Brooklyn, for instance, same design. Is it going to have the same value? No, because the demand must come to the supply. So this creates, again, risk, because if the demand drops, the supply cannot be transferred anywhere else, right? So the values change from area to area, and so does the demand, right? Now, the other thing is this. This is the danger of real estate, right? To me, quite honestly, is one of the only dangers of real estate, which is if you need money tomorrow, right? That's why people should not buy things cash, right? They should always leverage or finance, because if you need money tomorrow, highly liquid. What does liquid mean? Well, being able to cash out quickly. So if you go to your checking account, right, and you have money there, you can cash out on the spot. If you go to your savings account and there's money there, you can cash out on the spot. If you have stock or bonds or anything, you can sell it, and then maybe, depending on who you work with, maybe you can cash out on the spot. Maybe it's the next day or 2 days as it's demanded by the federal laws. 2 days. Like, that's fine. That's easy. For real estate, can you sell tomorrow? No. It takes a couple of weeks. It takes a couple of months. It might take years, depending on where the property is, what stage the property is, right? So real estate is relatively liquid economic product, meaning you can always cannot always be readily sold for cash. Since it is a large, long-term investment that has no exact duplicate, buyers must go through a complex process to evaluate and purchase the right parcel of real estate. So, illiquid means difficult to cash out. Liquid, easy to cash out. Okay, so write this down somewhere. Illiquid, difficult to cash out. The other thing I talked about, and we'll talk about this better tomorrow as well in chapter 16, in appraisals. But we have two good things here. I'm sorry, you have one good thing and one bad thing here with this one. It's slow to respond to changes. Like I said, it's predictable, right? It's also dangerous when you need money and it's slowly going up in value, right? Dangerous if it's predictable when it's going to drop in value. So when is the right time for it to be great investment? You don't care. When you don't care about the price going up and down. When you're for the long run, when you're there for 30 years, right? It's always a great investment if it's for 30 years. The problem is the majority of the buyers are not ready to be homeowners for 30 years. At least not in a particular area. They need to move. So Real estate is relatively slow to respond to market imbalances because new construction is large-scale, time-consuming process. The market is slow to respond to increases in demand. So the market is similarly slow to respond to sharp declines in demand. Since the product cannot be moved or sold elsewhere, instead, the owner must wait for the slow periods and simply hope for the best. So we go back to what I was just saying, what I showed you earlier, that graph that shows that, hey, over 30 years is going to be worth more anyway. It's going to be ups and downs, but that's over 30 years. It's going to be worth more. So people that 10 years ago had their property worth at 300 because of the market drop, right? Now they have their property back at 600s as an idea. So the market adjusted. The problem is people 10 years ago, they were desperate. A lot of people were desperate, losing their homes. They could not hold on to it. There's people still today that do not know that they can sell their home and still have a profit because they were underwater. And what is underwater, guys, real quick? Underwater is you owe more money to the bank than what the property is worth. You bought the property at a high, like today, 600,000 as an example, and then market crashed and the property is worth 300 or 400,000. So you owe the bank more than what the property is worth. So you have to wait until the market stabilizes again and goes back up, right, in order to be able to sell. And again, a lot of people don't even know that they are able to sell. Okay. The other thing is it's decentralized local market. Again, real estate cannot be shipped to a large central real estate market. Real estate markets are thus local in nature and highly susceptible to swings in the local economy. Again, keywords keep on being here. Let me show you again. Keep on being local. Local. Cannot move it. So can I say that the real estate market is great? No, I cannot. Certain areas not demand as much. Others. The key is local. Overall, yes, real estate market is great overall. Certain areas, no. All right. Supply, guys, we already talked about it. Factors influencing supply, we already talked about it. Demand, we talked about it. All right. Factors affecting demand. I want you guys to go to page 213. Page 213. Factors affecting demand. All right, so you guys already know demand is the desire of people to go to a particular area or to purchase something, right? You guys already know that. Demand. But what affects demand? What changes people's desires for certain areas? Okay, so right here it says demand of particular types of real estate relates to specific concerns of the users. These concerns revolve around the components of value, again, desire, utility, scarcity, and purchasing power, or transferability, so that's dust, it's a lot easier to remember. See, for residential users, right, what are we worried about for residential? Quality of life, usually. Neighborhood quality, right? And look, these are broad. Like, everybody has a different perception of what quality of life is for them and what the neighborhood quality is for them, right? Convenience and access to services and other facilities, and dwelling amenities in relation to the household size, lifestyle, and costs. Okay, so for residential, these are the key concerns when looking for properties. For retail, there are sufficient retail offices, for instance, or stores, right? Sufficient trade area, stores, sufficient trade area, population, income, right? You're not going to put a store in the middle of the desert, right? Unless you're really a long-term player, like you really don't care about money, right? And you know that eventually the desert's going to develop, eventually, right? So sufficient trade area, population, usually level of trade area, competition, sales volume per square foot of the rented area, and consumer spending patterns and growth patterns in the area. Question, where can we find these? Growth patterns. the trade area. Where can I find these? Does anybody know? Great. So you guys answered master plan. Great. Because the master plan will tell you the development. It doesn't tell you the exact growth, but it tells you the development of that particular municipality. But based on development, based on understanding of the cycle, right? If you start matching things, right? What cycle are we in right now? Is it the down cycle or the upward cycle? And then let's see what's going to happen in the master plan, what's projected over the next couple of years, right? You put that together and you'll understand the growth patterns in the area, right? Again, I can tell you more about Newark than anywhere else. But for instance, here in Newark, a couple of years ago, when we saw Nike open a store here, we knew something was up, right? Nike doesn't usually open a store. Usually they have other retailers that sell Nike products. They have their own store, right? And the area where they put it's not normal. And then comes a Starbucks. We have the stadium. Like things start to develop and you're like, oh, wait a minute, something is happening here. There's a growth pattern. Now there's more jobs because we have hotels. We have a bunch of commerce that came back to Newark and to the Broad Street, for instance, and Market Street. There's a bunch of developments happening in this area, the Ironbound as well. So that shows the potential growth patterns, the demands, and how it's going to change. So it's very, very important you guys are aware of this if you're trying to help somebody rent a space for a business. Like, what kind of business do you have? How can I help you improve your business? Right? And you're like, well, why do I need to help improve somebody's business? It's their business. We just get our commission and run, right? Don't forget, there's an old saying, which is happy wife, happy life, right? Think about this. Think about this. All right. All right. Some of you got way too happy for a second. My point was for businesses, for clients, right? You want to make sure your clients are happy. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. If your clients are happy, right, they're going to refer so much business. They're going to be faithful to you, loyal to you, right? Clients are happy. If you give them the best service possible, how can I help you grow your business? For me to help you grow your business, I need to understand your business, not just, oh, you're looking to rent? Yeah, here's a spot, right? They need to fit the business. I mean, fit the space. Very important, right? Office users, the same thing. The cost of occupancy to the business, the efficiency of the building and the suite in accommodating the business functions, the accessibility by employees and suppliers, and matching the building quality to the image and function of the business. See, Ruth gets it. She just said they'll possibly come back. Yes, treat them well, they'll come back. Simple as that. Industrial users. They're usually concerned with functionality, the availability and proximity of a labor pool, compliance with environmental regulations, permissible zoning, health and safety of the workers, access to suppliers and distribution channels. Okay, so yes, a lot of great things you guys need to remember depending on the type of buyer or tenant that you might have. Residential, retail, office, industrial users, and so on. All right. Another thing that affects the market is employment. You guys know that? That the availability or employment availability, I'm sorry, is key for a real estate market. You guys know that these interact. Does anybody know why? I love when you talk to the camera. I just don't. Like, I see you, like, for half of the class, I always see you, like, saying something to the camera. Always. How do these relate? Employment and real estate. How do they relate? You know. ratio to pay. Okay. You make money, you could purchase. Okay. No jobs, no money. Okay. You guys are talking about money, and Juan talked about purchase. But my question is, how does real estate relate to employment? How does employment relate to real estate? I'm not talking about purchase only. What have we been talking about in this whole chapter? We talked about supply and demand, right? Supply and demand. For instance, I'll give you the example right now. I'll give you the example. The base employment, right? If it's an area like here, the Ironbound section, as an example, or even the central area of work. If there's businesses, then it attracts more people because people usually tend to live close to where their employment is, right? Barely anybody likes to travel a whole hour. They want to be as close as possible to it, right? So the base employment affects the population pattern, right? So if there's a lot of employment, it affects the population pattern. So it's not only the purchase part of it, it's again the growth part of it, as we're talking about. If there's enough growth in the area, there's higher demand. If there's higher demand, then we need to come up with a supply for what? This is what we need to figure out. Like industrial, office, and so on, demand is based on the total employment. Get it? But that attracts population. So now we need to have in the area, now we need to have retail and residential. Again, guys, it's all about supply and demand. If we're in the middle of the desert, there's no employment in the middle of the desert. So do we need to have industrial sites there, retail and residential? No, probably just an industrial. Some type of manufacturing could be in the middle of the desert. But nobody's going to live in the middle of the desert. So why put a business in the middle of the desert? So that's what we're talking about. When we see changes in the population, when we see changes in the population, one of the key things to look at is employment. How many jobs are going to start in the area because of these developments? And how will it demand everything else? You guys got it? So yes, will the purchase power change because now there's employment? Absolutely. Right? And if you're closer, if you live close to it, you have less expenses, usually. Right? So yes, the purchasing power will change as well. But my point here was literally the change in demographics will also demand other types of stores, businesses, I'm sorry. All right, so we just covered that. And we come back to that cycle that we said before. All right? You guys have any questions? Oh, it's really early. No questions? Down there, YouTube. Questions, guys. Drop any questions you might have. Ruth is asking if I drew. What, this? Yeah, this is how I started the chapter. I talked about the changes in patterns, right? So the cycle where there's the undersupply and there's high prices. So there's no vacancy, right? So construction starts, and if there's too much construction, then the prices start dropping, right? To reach the balance, which is where we ideally want to be, right? And prices keep on dropping until we have an oversupply, low prices, and high vacancies. So now it demands construction, right? And this keeps on going. It's a cycle, right? And what I was showing you about the 10 to 15 years change here is that every 10 to 15 years, there's a cycle. That's what I zoomed here. There's a cycle where property values go up, come down, they go up, come down, and so on. And I showed that back in 1930, for instance, as an example, this property was $100,000, but the same property reached a point in 2009, for instance, where it's like $700,000. So from 1930 until now, it increased in value, right? And it keeps on increasing in value. It's never going to drop. So there's, sorry, my hand disappeared there, right? So it's never going to drop. I'm a magician. It's never going to lose value to the point where it's not something you can recuperate. That's what I was trying to say. So there's always ups and downs. The difference between the stock market and the real estate is that this happens in the stock market. These ups and downs, they happen on an hourly basis, right? In real estate, these are years for this to happen. Okay? So this is the hourly basis of a stock market. This is the hourly basis of real estate. So technically, always going up in value. Okay? So I was just showing, I started through the ends and then I went back up. So this is just for the YouTubers and for whoever got into the class later. But what I was showing is that there's a cycle. People need to be ready for it, and you guys need to be ready for it. Like this does not happen all the time. This crash in the real estate market does not happen all the time. There's ups and downs, but always increasing. Not a crash like we had in 2009. All right? Questions? Question comes. Marta says, my son is asking about wholesaling. Okay. What is the question? You gonna put him in the camera? What's up? What is your wholesaling question? Let me know. Yuli's typing a question. Marta's son is asking a question. And Juan's asking, do you think we could crash again anytime soon? So, I'm not saying crash, but I'm talking about cycles. This will happen no matter what. Will it be a crash? A lot of people disagree with me. I think yes, there will be one. And when we say crash, by the way, as investors, when we say crash, I'm not expecting a 2009 to happen again, right? Because we're still not out of whatever happened here. But the average is 10 to 15, maybe 20% drop or increase in values, right? But can we expect maybe a little bit more than that? Possibly, right? That's all I can say as far as a crash. Well, one, COVID is not the only issue. There's a lot more factors in it, but yes, it did affect a lot of people. Business. So if we go back to this, and Marta, I'll address you in a second, in your side. But if we go back to this, a lot of jobs closed, a lot of manufacturing closed. So that means that people will leave because they will lose their homes. This is a trickle-down effect. Will it have the same crash effect of 2009? Probably not. But will a lot of people, like I said, there's over 3 million foreclosures that happened that were filed just in the past couple of weeks, right? Will this affect a lot of people? Will this affect the economy overall? Yeah, it will. In certain areas, it's going to be a disaster. In others, maybe not as much. So will we have a crash again? Yes. Will it be the same? No. So don't expect the same at all. Tiana's Newark shut down again? Kinda, yeah. Kinda. All right, so let me address Marta's son. What is Marta's son's name? I like to talk to people by their Ricardo. Okay. All right, so Ricardo is asking, what is wholesale, and can you explain in detail? So this is not the class for explaining wholesale in detail because it's a real estate salesperson class. But wholesaling is, as an example, you put a property under contract, right? Let's say, Ricardo, you put a property in the contract and then you find Marta, right? And Marta wants to buy a property that you have. So wholesaling is literally you looking at Marta and say, hey, Marta, I have this property for $5,000. I'll release the property to you, right? So now Marta is the one buying the great deal that Ricardo, you were buying. So that's the gist of it. You find a deal that Marta wants, you put her in the contract, and you flip it to Marta. That's it. Marta buys for you. Pretty much it. There's a risk with that. If Marta does not buy, you are usually responsible for the purchase. So whoever the seller is can sue both of you. That's the risk with an assignment or wholesaling. But that's the gist of it. I mean, I can go more in detail how things operate and how you should do a successful, how you can do a successful wholesaling, but that's what wholesaling is. Any further questions? Just let me know. All right, Millie. Millie's asking, if agents don't agree on commissions, what chapter should I look for that? If agents don't agree on commissions? A little lost in that question. Because an agent negotiates with the broker the commission. So you're entitled to negotiate with a broker what your payout is going to be, right? If you're negotiating with the seller the commission, then you're negotiating on behalf of the broker. So commissions are negotiable. But agents don't agree on commission. There's really, you're talking about between agents, because that doesn't happen. If you're talking about the agent with the broker, then there's a chapter for that. If you're talking about between the agent and the seller, then that's the listings, right? But then again, it's negotiable. Let me know exactly what it is you're looking for. If you have more details, or send it to me on a separate message on the WhatsApp, and I'll address it. Marta, so Ricardo was happy with the answer. We're good? Great. All right. Anybody else? Is there anybody I did not address? Questions? Addressed it all? Questions? Nope. So early. I can't let you guys go like that. Ruth, but in the beginning, right? What's your question? I'm sorry. What's in the beginning? You're talking about negotiation of commissions? Sorry, there's a little lag. Okay. Waiting. All right, Mealy, we'll talk about that separately, okay? Because I don't know exactly what the question will be. So try to remember a little bit more regarding that question, and send me a message on WhatsApp. Sam, is there a Quizlet for the school itself? So Sam, you know what this means right here? Chapter 15 means we've reached halfway. Okay, means that I've explained. Sorry, I'm picking on Sam because Sam's a good friend of mine for years. So I'm going to pick on her. So, and I can't do that. I'll pick on anybody anyway. So this means that I answered what your question is. I answered them a million times, right? Especially right from the beginning. But there's something called Student Portal. Okay, Sam? Something called Student Portal. And look. Let me zoom in for you. I don't know if you can see. Let me zoom in a little bit more. There it's anyway, I didn't give the full info. Guys, how many times did I talk about Quizlet? Raise your hand if you've heard me talk about Quizlet before. Oh look, Sam, look. Look, everybody, look at that. All right. Yes, guys, if this is how I treat my friends, imagine how I treat my enemies. I know. I know what you guys are thinking. But yes, a lot of love for everybody. Don't worry about it. Okay, Mealy, the question on listings. So yes, it will be a listing. It's negotiable. The listing agent doesn't have to agree to the commission. The seller does not have to agree to commission, right? That means we can walk away from the deal. Like if we don't agree in commission, we walk away from the deal. That's all. But commissions are negotiable. That's what you got to remember. All right, guys. If there's no other questions, we are done. 12:55. Wow. I'll see you tonight for math. If you're joining the evening class, we have a math class tonight at 5:30. Or I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, guys. Have a blessed day.